It seems an anomaly to have a Jew hailed the strongest man in the world. But that is what they say of Zisha Breitbart, regarded as the Superman of physical prowess and perfection. Echoes of the remarkable feats of strength exhibited by this modern Samson have reached us from time to time, and of his successful appearances in the theaters of Vienna, London, and other European capitals. Recently he made his debut at the Orpheum Theatre in Brooklyn. Thence he will travel over the Keith circuit, appearing at the Palace Theatre in New York during the week commencing December 3rd. The youngest son of a mighty blacksmith in the little Polish village where he was born, Breitbart exhibited remarkable power even as a child. His only toys were the horseshoes and nails around his father's shop. While he never had occasion to tear a lion's mouth apart, or carry off the gates of Gaza like Samson of old, or strangle a huge serpent with his hands as Hercules did, there is no telling what Zisha Breitbart might do in an emergency. Today he can twist an iron bar, snap a steel beam, or bite in two a thick metal chain as easily as the average man can break a match or bite an apple. Moreover, he can put a piece of leather in his mouth, hitch himself to a truck loaded with people, and draw it casually around the track. Breitbart has many pseudonyms. He is known as the Iron King, the Polish Apollo, the modern Samson, the Superman of strength. But the remarkable thing about Breitbart is that there is little in his general appearance to indicate the possession of such prodigious strength. True, he is tall and fairly heavy, but his face is that of a thinking human being, unlike one who lives by brute strength alone. He looks like the average, well-set, athletic young man. In general appearance, he somewhat resembles Valentino, the idol of the screen, or perhaps Houdini, the Jewish handcuff king. Breitbart's hobby is a library of some 2,000 volumes on the history of the Golden Age in Rome. Referring to the Roman Colosseum, which he considers his favorite spot in all the world, Breitbart told the interviewer, "I'd take a furnished room there any time. When I was a little boy working in my father's blacksmith shop in Lodz, Poland, I used to love to read about the Roman emperors and generals, and the things they did. I was especially interested in the tortures they tried on people. I would try to devise the same instruments and try them on myself, and most of the time I could stand them without much pain and without suffering any real injury." Zisha Breitbart comes from a Jewish family long noted for its strength. To judge from such examples of physical strength and dexterity as the European Breitbart, and the display of muscular agility by American Jews like Benny Leonard and Harry Houdini, it looks as if a sturdier Jew is now in the making. The poor, despised ghetto type, with bent shoulders and hollow chest, is rapidly passing. The Jews of today can point with pride to Zisha Breitbart as the ideal presentment of their people from a physical standpoint, just as Einstein typifies the Jewish ideal in the world of the intellect. Once I said to my elder brother, "You know what? I want to be another Samson." My brother looked at me as if I were crazy. He was only a year older than I, but he was a child of an entirely different cut. "You're crazy," said my brother. "Samson lived in the land of Israel. There can be no Samson today." "Just the same, I'm going to be another Samson," I argued stubbornly. "I'll prove to you that I can knock down a fortress with my bare hands. You know well enough that I am a Samson, and you'll have to stop making fun of me." "But where will you get some Philistines?" he asked me. "And even if you will get them, they'll burn out your eyes." That stumped me. Really, how in the world was I to get some Philistines? The thought of having my eyes burned out didn't trouble me. After all, if one is a Samson, one should be prepared for such a thing. But Philistines. Where was I to find Philistines? Without them, the whole business was off. Day after day I dreamed about Samson. I let my hair grow long, drank no wine, not because I was a Nazarite like Samson, but because we were so poor that there was never any wine in our house, not even for the Sabbath cup of benediction. Just the same, I had the certainty that I was in every way like Samson. I used to blow the bellows in my father's smithy, and every time that the flames mounted and the sparks began to fly, I saw in my mind's eye how Samson put the foxes' tails on fire and let them loose in the fields of the Philistines. Of course, I didn't know how to rend apart a lion because I never saw a lion, except on the curtain of the Holy Ark in the synagogue, and there it had the wings of an eagle. However, in an alley not far from where we lived, there was an anti-Semite who owned an enormous vicious dog. I made up my mind that I would tear that animal limb from limb, and thus prove to every doubter that I was the strong man Samson. One day I gathered some small boys of my age, and we started for the Jew hater's house. I was going to show them that, since I was Samson, I would rip that dog apart. As soon as the dog saw us approach, he began to thrash about, gnashed his teeth, and howled. My companions stood frightened, but I hastened forward unconcerned. That dog could spot a Jew a mile off, and thereupon started to growl. He never attacked Gentiles, only Jews. You can well imagine how he felt when he sniffed the presence of an entire gang of Jews. True, we were only mites of Jews, but for his purposes we were fully Jews. His owner stood by and had great pleasure from his dog's rage. "Children," I cried to the boys, "have no fear. I am with you, and I am the strong man Samson, and I will tear this lion to pieces." In my eyes, that dog was no dog, but a real lion. In my fantasy, I saw myself in the forest of Judea, where I came face to face with a lion, and tore him in two. The other little boys became infected with my courage, and they followed me. No sooner did we get close when the dog leaped at us like an honest-to-goodness lion. The boys began to shriek in terror. At that moment, I truly felt like a strong man. I knew that it was my duty to save the boys, and so, with the cry of Shema Yisrael, I grappled with the dog. A fierce life-and-death struggle took place. He was a lot bigger than I, and tried to get his jaws into me, but every time he opened his mouth, I pounded at him with my fists, and he let out a piteous howl. The battle lasted fully 5 minutes, until the beast lay stretched out before me, bleeding from many wounds. He was hardly breathing. His owner, who watched the fight from a distance, had been certain that I would wind up a sorry mess, and so he stood by smiling with great pleasure. But later, when he saw his dog lying on the ground with blood streaming from him, he raised a great outcry and seized a gun. When we saw him do that, we fled. Just the same, that was the end of that dog, and we never had any trouble again from that quarter. "Zisha, the blacksmith's son, is Samson," the Jewish children used to boast about me thereafter. "Zisha, the blacksmith's son, has torn apart a lion. Wait and see, he'll yet conquer the Philistines." Did I need more proof that I was a genuine Samson? Yes, I did. If I was Samson, I had to stand between the pillars of the Philistines' temple as they stood praying in it and bring it down on their heads. But there was the rub. Where was I to lay my hands on some Philistines? And God only knew if there were any more Philistines on earth. I used to sit with a faraway look at my prayer desk in the synagogue and create Philistines out of thin air. I was certain they could be found somewhere, but where exactly I didn't know. One day I approached a very old Jew with a flowing gray beard and beetling eyebrows as he sat poring over his Mishnah in the synagogue. He looked old enough to know. "Where can I find the Philistines who gouged out Samson's eyes?" I asked him. "What on earth do you need Philistines for?" he shot back at me, his thick eyebrows quivering with laughter. "I need them badly," I answered. "I am the strong man Samson, and I want to throw down their temple." "Oh, I see," laughed the old man. "So you are Samson. Well, well, know then that there are no more Philistines in the world. God let them perish because they behaved wickedly toward the Jews. And God will also punish in the same way all those nations that are harming Jews today, rest assured." When I heard that there were no more Philistines in the world, I grew heavy-hearted. I don't know whether I would have grieved more had I been informed that my entire family had died of the pestilence. Believe me, it was no joke. Without any Philistines, how could I be a Samson? And how could I knock down their temple? That day I lost my appetite and went about moping miserably. There are no Philistines. God destroyed them all because they were wicked toward the Jews. No Philistines, no Samson. One day I observed that the synagogue was supported by wooden posts. As I looked at them, they suddenly became transformed in my eyes into stone pillars, and I resolved that I must knock them down. At that, there took place a bitter struggle within me, between the evil spirit and the good spirit. The evil spirit whispered, "Listen, Zisha, don't worry yourself over it and go ahead and knock down those pillars. Aren't you Samson? No one will believe you are until you knock down those pillars." The good spirit, on the other hand, argued, "Don't be a fool, Zisha. These are no pillars, only posts. Without their support, the synagogue would cave in. What the devil do you want to do, knock down the synagogue? A fine Samson you'll be then to knock down a house of God where Jews pray and study the Torah." For 2 interminable weeks I walked about in a daze, in me raging a battle between good and evil. My eyes looked feverish. I became emaciated. But one evening I no longer could hold out, and I entered the synagogue. I took firm hold of a post and tried to wrench it loose. I must have looked insane, for a number of Jews ran up to me and seized hold of my arms. "Crazy boy!" they shouted. "What are you trying to do? Knock down the synagogue?" At that I came to and was filled with horror. I let go of the post and fled. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.